Supergirl Season 2, Episode 16, Star-Crossed. Now, this episode was actually, in a sense, the first half of the Supergirl Flash crossover. It didn't cross over, it was a lot like the Alien thing. I thought that this was supposed to be a big two-part deal, because that's why Supergirl actually didn't come on last week, because this week is the episode of the Flash musical episode. So I was like, okay, they held it off for an entire week because it's such a big deal. It's the two-part crossover. And once again, just like the Alien thing, it was literally at the end of the episode. Like, this episode easily could have premiered last week, and they didn't even bother. They could have just, of course it would have, they kind of did that in order to have more people watch The Flash, although I think everyone watches The Flash. Maybe Supergirl is the one that kind of needed the help. But I was like, man, just like with the Alien, the four-part crossover, it was the very end. It was like the last 3 minutes. It was better than the Alien thing. That was literally like the last minute of the episode was the technical crossover. But I was like, alright, the rest of the episode, once again, it was just a good Supergirl episode. And I did enjoy it. It was definitely good. Not as impactful as I thought it was going to be as far as the main story, which was, Mon-El's parents, come to Earth and everyone finds out that he was actually the prince the whole time, which I guessed a little while back, like maybe he was lying and stuff like that. And we find out that's the truth. And, we see what really happened, and instead of the prince sacrificing himself for Mon-El and being like, you get in, the guy was actually just his bodyguard, and he was just like pushing people out of the way, and he ends up actually stealing a ship from Kryptonian, and he kills that guy. So it changes up the story a little bit. If it weren't for that, it kind of would have been a normal story. It wouldn't have been that big of a deal, outside of the fact that he lied about it. Because really, it was a single-person ship, and if they got to it first and nobody else was there, then it wouldn't have really been that big of a deal. Be like, yeah, he lied about being the prince, but other than that, that story wouldn't have been anything. But it's like, no, that guy was like shooting people to make sure that Mon-El got away, and like he kills that guy. So it changed up the story just a little bit. And of course, Mon-El and Kara have huge issues because of that, because he is not just, a Daxamite, he's the prince of the Daxamites, and he benefited from their really crappy society and stuff like that. So things don't work out for them. Of course, that ends up happening officially by the end of the episode, and they are no longer together. And I don't know if that's going to change or anything like that. And I mentioned before, I really was hoping this type of thing wouldn't happen. It's a much better reason, so I at least appreciate that compared to the stuff with Jimmy. I was like, at least this is a legitimate reason, but it still didn't even last the full season, because I was like, if they get together and they break up, it needs to at least last the rest of this season. They can break up halfway through the next season, and I'll be like, you know what? It's still a short amount of time, really, but at least it went through an entire season, and it didn't even do that. It still managed to do it super early, so I really have to grab onto the fact that at least this time it was a legitimate reason for her to be mad, and a legitimate reason for them to not end up together. But I was still a little annoyed by that. I'm like, why do they bother with giving her relationships when they make them less than a season long? It just feels pointless a little bit for it to be a relationship. Like, they could have just been good friends and been going kind of back and forth without them actually being together, and then this kind of stopped them from getting together. That would have been fine. But it was like, nope, they have to actually be together, and then they break up, which them actually being together was officially being together was only like 3 or 4 episodes too, so it was still really, really short. Still wasn't even the most of the season that they've been on screen together. So still kind of annoying, where it's just like, why did they bother doing that? Unless they end up getting back together and there's just some big threat that brings them back together by the end of the season, I'll be fine. If it's like they're together for a little, they break up for a little, and then they get back together, that'll be fine. But for now, I'm just like, why? Why bother with the relationship again to end it after a couple of episodes? But like I said, that side of the story actually wasn't as impactful as I thought it would be, with Mon-El's parents coming in. They didn't really intrude too much. They stayed on the ship the whole time, and then when he was mad at the end, he was like, I want to stay here. And they're like, okay. And that was it. I'm sure they'll be there, once Kara ends up back with the characters. But I was just like, oh, okay. I mean, that was surprisingly nice. I mean, they went around looking for him and stuff like that. They finally get to him, and he's like, no, I want to stay on Earth. I thought for sure his dad was going to actually send him to Daxam, because he was like flipping through the thing. I was like, why would he need to flip through that to send him back? And I was like, oh, he's getting tricked. I was like, nope, he sent him right back. So I was very surprised. But I don't know what they're gonna do with them. I feel like they agreed in this episode to let him go back to Earth, but I feel like that can't be it. Like they I don't know. It's hard to say because they don't seem super overbearing. They certainly want him to go back to Daxam with them, but even from the beginning, outside of being, talking with Kara the way that they did, that's just their people don't like each other. They never seemed overbearing to him, like, you have to do this or something like that. And when he was honest, like, I kind of hate the person that I was and what we did, they were kind of cool about it. They didn't like it, you can tell that, but they never yelled at him, actually. Like, the whole episode, he was like, I like Kara and stuff like that, and his mom was really nice, and his dad was pretty laid back about everything. So I'm like, they don't seem super bad as far as being like the king and queen, or like our son has to be this exact way, and he has to be like basically clones of the two of us. They didn't seem that way. So I'm like, all right, they're kind of cool to him, but it just seems weird that they go through all this, and it's like, all right, well, you want to stay here, bye, and they just go back. So I don't know if this is just the end and they let them go back to Earth and they're gone, but I feel like they gotta still be there in the next episode. It just seems crazy the journey that they've been on for them to just be like, okay, and then they leave. I feel like they have to at least come down to Earth for an episode and be like, all right, this is what Earth is really like. We should, talk with the DEO and figure out how to get like a teleporter or something like that. And they mentioned that there are a ton of people on Daxam, so their technology isn't as big as it used to be as far as like when Mon-El first showed up to try to send a message or anything. But there are already people still, surviving on Daxam and stuff like that. So I was like, all right, I'm kind of curious to see where they go with this. I don't know if Mon-El is going to stay on the show permanently or how they're going to play around with that idea. But his parents can't just leave. They have to show up in the next episode and be like, all right, we'll explore Earth and then we'll leave you alone. So that's how I feel things are going to go in next week's episode. And I hope that's the case, because otherwise it wouldn't make sense for them to just take off. And for them to just stay on the ship the whole time, I feel would be kind of pointless. I feel like there's so much that they could do with them being on Earth and what they can learn about their son and about Kara and about just Earth in general. And then we have the other side of this story that really got my attention. I think it was the more entertaining story for this episode. I felt it had a bit more weight to it because it wasn't just the relationship storyline, even though it was about a relationship. We find out that Winn, this whole time, has been getting played. And he goes to the museum, and Lyra, who we find out actually is invisible on all sorts of cameras and stuff, you can't have video or a picture of her people, she got scammed. And they find out that she's been doing this before. And then it becomes this is where it kind of got really TV-like, where she was being the bad person for a good reason to save her brother, and then Winn still wanted to be with her, and I was like, it was a very TV thing, but at the same time, I kind of want Winn to be with somebody too, because he's just funny, and he's always the guy who either has horrible family issues with his father, or he can't get the girl, like with Kara, so he's kind of had nothing. Like, he got a new job working with the DEO, and that's pretty much it. That's like the only really good thing that's happened to him the entire series. He lived recently when he was that episode where he got beat up and he was almost killed. He did live, so that's a pretty good deal. But his girlfriend stuff has been real bad. His last girlfriend was Banshee, so she turned into a villain. Before that was Kara, and that's pretty much it. So he's had some pretty bad luck in that route, and I want this to work where she was doing a bad thing before a good reason to save her brother, and ultimately everything worked out, and they have their little kiss at the end. And I was like, okay, they might actually still have a relationship, which somehow, after everything they went through, their relationship might actually still end up lasting longer than Kara and Mon-El's. So we'll see how that plays out if Lyra continues to be a big part of the show, and then her brother kind of comes into it a little bit, and whether or not they stay, on Earth. But I was like, all right, I like that storyline. It was cool to see that he was being played, because this is a character, like, she comes in out of nowhere, and then poof, they have a relationship, and it was fine. There was no big deal. It was just kind of funny. Like, he's just in love with this girl, like, instantly. They do it all the time, and it's just like a really simple type of relationship. And then we find out that she was playing him the whole time, but she didn't care, and then she still cared a little bit, and so of course they had like their little kiss at the end of the episode. And I felt it just had a little bit more weight to it. Also, the fight was actually really cool, where he got, he was upset, and it was like, all right, well, here's Jimmy as Guardian again, and then he has to fight those two guys, and they basically just had straight up like lightsaber guns, like their lasers were ricocheting, they were like slicing through everything. It was actually kind of cool, especially the part. It was like at the very end of the fight, the guy shoots at Jimmy and he like reflects it, and he like cuts the sign for the trailer park in half, and it just falls to the ground. And I just thought the way they did it, I thought visually it just looked really cool. So I actually enjoyed that fight. Alex was in there. She didn't get to shoot off her gun. She held it at a couple of people in this episode, but she never got to shoot her special alien gun this time. But there was a scene like right after she showed up, and the guy tried to fight her, and he tried to like knock the gun out of her hand. When she punched him in the stomach, I swear that guy looked like he was gonna completely fall over. It was like he got paralyzed or something from one punch, and he was just like like it just looked like he was falling all the way over to me for some reason. I was like, man, how hard did she hit him? But I like that fight scene. It was fairly simple, and then that's of course when we get the reveal that she's not just bad, she's like anti-hero bad, where it's a bad thing but for a good reason, so we can still like her character in the end. But I still like that side of the storyline a little bit more. I'm sure things will kind of pick up once we get to next week's episode. I'm assuming, at least, like I said, I don't believe Mon-El's parents are just going to take off after this one episode, because that feels pointless to me, to have them even show up and then be like, okay, you don't want to come home, see ya. So I feel like they have to get on Earth in this next episode, and maybe we'll see that relationship change between Mon-El and Kara, where she sees, you know, just some deeper elements, and that probably won't change much because she knows what he was, and of course the fact that he lied and all that stuff. So it's hard to say if they'll end up together. I hope they do, honestly, just because my whole issue with them doing relationship stuff for Kara's character, and it's just like boom, relationship, and it's done. So I really hope that they just end up together. I don't care how stupid the reason is, just for the sake of them doing a decent length on a relationship for her character. I just want them to get back together. That's honestly the only reason. I do think they work fine together. I do think they're fine as a couple. I don't hate them or anything like that. But really, it's solely based on my hatred of how short they do the relationships for Kara in this show. And it just seems so pointless to do that again. So I'm hoping that that's not the case, and we get to see that, you know, this relationship actually move on to something better. But for now, we just gotta wait and see what happens. And she gets hit by Magic Meister, I believe is the guy's name, at the end of this episode, and that was pretty interesting because I didn't know that he knew who Barry was. So I'm curious to get the answer to that, as to how it just makes me wonder, like, was he on Earth 1 before, or was he always on Kara's Earth, which I believe is like Earth 613 or something, like it's like in the hundreds, I believe it is. Or it might just be like in the 60s. It's one of those, I believe. But, you know, it just made me wonder. He was like, you know, this dimension's been fun, but I gotta chase down the fastest man alive. And I was like, okay, so he knows who Barry is. Does that mean that he's been jumping through dimensions a bunch? Which dimension is he actually from? So, had me excited. And of course, he knocks out Kara, and she's not actually gone. From the promos, I thought that he like sucked them into a different world. But they're all just mentally. It's like the Matrix. You know, if they die in their little musical thing, then they die for real. They die in their bodies, and they're just, you know, lifeless bodies for now. But I'm excited to get into the Flash episode. They made a cool reference to it because, like I said initially, I thought this whole episode was going to be a musical thing, and I was like, yeah, that'll be interesting to see because it's such a serious thing, but they're going to make it musical as well. I was like, I can't wait to see how that plays out with all these serious elements. And then they referenced the musical thing where people just start singing out of nowhere. And then none of that was in there until the very end. Especially when the TV started, I was like, oh, here we go, musical. It was like, oh, nope, just a whole serious episode, and then musical two-part event at the very end. I just hate how they do the crossovers with Supergirl. It's always the end of the episode. If it ever goes into both shows, it's always at the end of the episode. The only time they've done like a big crossover and it's just worked was when Barry showed up in Supergirl, and it was like he was there the whole episode. It was like, this is good. Not a great episode, just I felt they really wasted that team up. But every time they do it through multiple shows and they include Supergirl, it just sucks. It's just like, why bother doing that at the end? Like, it might as well just not be a part of the episode and just show the promo for Flash and be like, hey, you should check out Flash tomorrow because Supergirl will show up. There's no real reason to tie it in because it's so minute. It's just, honestly, it feels a little bit pointless just to have that little tagline like, it continues in the Flash. It's just not that big of a deal. Which also when they do that, it's like, well, then you think you need to watch Supergirl, and it's just like the alien thing. You might end up wasting your time if you were only interested in watching Supergirl because it crossed over with the Flash. But still enjoyed the episode. I just thought it was kind of okay. The part that I was really looking forward to, I didn't feel like had a huge impact. The relationship thing being the biggest impact kind of bugs me because of my issues with how quickly they do the relationship stuff. So even though it has an impact, it's probably not the best impact for me personally because I just hate how they've done it. But would love to know what you guys thought about this episode, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, and I want to know what you do think is going to happen with Mon-El's parents in the next episode. Like, are they going to stick around? Will they somehow end up getting Mon-El and Kara back together by saying or doing something random? It's hard to really guess with them. But would love to know how you guys think things are going to play out with his parents. And of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.